All right, welcome everyone to another episode of the Music Entrepreneur Club. I'm super excited for this conversation. I met Dove a while ago. Funk Volume still existed. And then I reconnected with her on Clubhouse, even though I haven't been on Clubhouse in a long time. But Dove, I'm sure you wear 25 different hats. But I met you as a publicist, but feel free to let people know just a little brief background about what you do, what you've done, and what you're currently doing.
Okay, so a lot of people ask me like how I got into the industry, and really it was because I was an artist first. You know, I was a dancer. I used to be a B-girl, and then a street dancer, and we used to do competitions back in the day. I'm going to age myself so bad, but
nice.
I was definitely a club girl, and I wrote songs and I rapped and all the trappings of the 90s of being able to express yourself. But then I realized too that fame wasn't for me, especially understanding how I would be received based on how I looked. And it just wasn't going to matter how talented I was. I felt like the perception is always the reality, and people don't know your heart. They don't know your upbringing, and they don't know these things about you. And I just didn't have the grit to survive that. I didn't. I just was too sensitive. And I think it made me say, okay, you know what? This part of it's not for me. But I went on to help others. Like I choreographed for groups, or I helped labels, even as a young, person as a side job. Just I would have a regular 9 to 5. And then how can I get involved to help you with finding new artists or whatever the case was? That evolved into taking photos, which I always kind of had an interest in photography from my mom. But I started taking photos with just like a film camera, point and shoot film camera, but I would capture like the b-boys in midair, and I would, not even understanding how the camera works necessarily. I just kind of naturally had an eye for it. And I would give those pictures to like the rappers and the dancers in the community in the Pacific Northwest, so Seattle, Tacoma, where I grew up. So I don't know, as I got older, it was like everyone said, well, you're getting older, you got to grow up. Hip hop is for kids. You shouldn't be doing that. And so I spent a lot of my late 20s being really sad, and feeling like I don't fit in. I've spent my whole youth being a part of this culture and this movement that I, felt so honored to be welcomed into, just honored, And when I finally just said, you know what, I need to do something. So I started taking photos again. And I sent photos to one of my friends who had just started a new website, because back then they weren't blogs, they were websites or online magazines. And it was of, I forgot what it was, pictures of initially. And they asked me would I take photos at the Roots concert, because the Roots were coming through. This was in early 2000. I want to say it might have been even fall of 99. It was Halloween. I remember that. So maybe it was late 2000. Either way. So I took these pictures and I sent them over, and they said, could you write something about each photo? So I did. I did like this little photo essay to explain what was happening. And they're like, you're a really good writer. Have you ever written before? Have you tried? And I said, well, no, I knew I could write, but no one would give me a shot because I didn't have a college degree. I didn't come up in the intern circles. I wasn't, the cool kids that did that. I wasn't a part of their scene. Right. So they said, well, shoot, we'd love for you to write for us. So then I was like, okay, well, let me try, Next thing you know, I connected with Davey D out in the Bay Area. And I don't even remember how we initially connected, but I started writing for him. And then he introduced me to Chuck Creekmer at All Hip Hop, who then let me write for All Hip Hop. I became an editor for All Hip Hop and was with them from 2001 to 2008. Dave also introduced me to Wendy Day, who became a great mentor for me. I started writing for Elemental Magazine, Rhyme Magazine, did some occasional stuff for YRB. I got to write for Ozone Magazine a couple times for anyone who remembers that. Shout out to Julia. That was amazing. And so I just kind of built a name up on the internet when it wasn't cool to be on the internet. When writers at print magazines would call us hacks and say the internet's never going to be big, you're not real journalists. I mean, technically, I wasn't a real journalist. I was just a person that decided to write. Right. So I kind of didn't really give myself much credit in those days, and I was bored working 9-to-5 jobs and doing the side hustle every night. So I learned about publicity from a friend. Like, well, I would ask the artist, well, who's your publicist? Oh, I can't afford one. And they would tell me that a publicist could cost like $5,000 a month, up to $15,000 a month. This was in the early 2000s. And I'm like, what? I could be rich. Are you kidding me? So I said, well, let me just try this out. So I started with my friends. Like, can I be your publicist? I'm going to charge you $25 a month so I can pay for my website. You know? And I had people turn me down. Like, well, I have my own website. Why would I need you? And so my first real client was Wordsworth from Lyricist Lounge. And then I had Jake One, who, of course, is one of the greatest producers of our time. And then my friend Encore, who then ended up, because of the press that I had helped him get on his album, got signed by Hieroglyphics. And then Tajay from Hieroglyphics said, who did your press? I want to hire that person. And he gave me my very first check ever as a publicist.
Nice.
And Carmelita Sanchez from the Wake Up Show. I had met her, Sway, everybody at like the B-Boy Summits, because I would always go to all the B-Boy functions, wherever they were. Broke as hell. No money, just I'm gonna fly, sleep on somebody's floor, because I have to be in the mix. You know, it's like my life's blood to be there. Right. So she said, well, hey, I told Crazy Legs that he should hire you to do press for Rocksteady anniversary. And this is still when I lived in Seattle, in Tacoma. And I'm like, well, I don't know how to do press for something like that. Like, that's big. And she said, no, you'll be fine. Just go. Crazy Legs flew me out. This was 2003. And by now, by 2003, I was writing a lot. Like, my name was kind of out there. No one knew what I looked like, because all we had back then was like AOL chat.
Right.
We didn't have social media.
Right.
So no one knew what I looked like. Nobody knew. And I was like, here's a way for me to use my voice, my talents, to help other people raise their voices. And I love that. So I come out to New York, Rocksteady anniversary, Chelsea Piers. And I don't know if you ever got to go to the anniversaries when they were there.
I didn't.
I can't tell you how many people were there, but I'm going to gather it was probably a good 1,500 people. It was a lot to be on one pier. It might have been more than that. It was probably 90 degrees out, and in New York, 90 degrees feels like 150 because it's just hot, sweaty. Right. You're not used to that climate. I've got a million people, you know, yelling and screaming because they want to be backstage and they want to be here. And it's just legend after legend after legend walking through these doors. Some of them I knew already just from all my work, you know, years dancing, opening for other groups and doing all these things I had done. But to be in that mix was just like, this is where I need to be. Right. So in the back of my mind, I went home. This was in July. I said, I'm going to move to New York. I don't know when, you know, I don't know how. I was poor, you know, I really grew up with nothing. And I worked a job that was a 9-to-5 job, but my take home was probably like $1,400 a month. You know,
moving to New York with maybe 1,400 a month. That's a tough.
It was a dream. Okay. Right. And I was, you know, in my mid-30s, and I literally would wake up like I'm not even happy to be here anymore, you know? So I ended up picking up my life, and I moved to New York at 37. I quit my job, put in my notice at my apartment, drove across the country by myself for 5 days. I shipped like maybe 10 boxes or so, and then had my little car full of stuff. I could write a book actually about my trip over the mountains, because I hit a snowstorm in the middle of April in the mountains in Wyoming. It's a thing. It was it's like one of those Lifetime movies. It was like that. It was crazy. And thank God I made it through. Thank God for the kindness of people. So I ended up I drove my car to Virginia. My sister drove me up to New York, landed here. I had 1 month's rent paid with 2 roommates, $152 and some change in my bank account, no job and no plan B. And I said, but this is my life now and I'm going to make it work. And the first year, my first clients that I had, obviously Wordsworth, who helped me get my apartment, incidentally, thanks to him too. You know, he was a catalyst in introducing me to his friends and giving me that spot to be able to be here. My first clients were Jay Mills, who at the time was with Making the Band. You know, that battle had happened already. He was kind of the hot shit. He was over at Universal at the time. Jim Jones, who I had interviewed for Rhyme Magazine, and he just liked my attitude. He was like, you know, I fuck with you. I like you. I like your style, kid. You know, come work for me. And this was after he had just done his first solo album. So I got to work with him on that whole Harlem Diary of a Summer album. And it was between him and Jay Mills, that was really my kind of internship, because even though I was older, even though I had tons of corporate experience, I was new to this. And I knew coming into it, you don't get anything without paying your dues. You have to show and prove, you know what I mean? So I ended up working with Needles. I was with him 3 years, actually. I ended up working with Ron Browse. I met him through Jay Mills. I was with him for a good 3 years. We're still friends. All of us are actually also friends. But yeah, I mean, it's just crazy how life evolves, right? I was there with Cypher Sounds and Angela Yee for the launch of their morning show on Shade 45. I went on to work with various artists, you know, in different capacities, usually just doing New York runs, you know, where you take them around to meet different media. I was still, you know, All Hip Hop by '06 was the #1 brand in the world. Things got really hectic with that. I was using all my extra money. I would go to TJ's DJs in the South. The Core DJs had just launched. I would go to their retreats. I would go to the Magic Convention in Vegas. I had already been doing that, but you know, now I'm literally working on scraps, like whatever checks I can get, but I made a way.
Right.
I made a way, sacrifice. If I got to have 4 roommates and we sleeping in the cheapest hotel on the strip, that's what we're doing. So we could be there. But all that started to pay off because people started to see me and remember me. And now, you know what? Oh, you work with them? Okay, let me hire you. And thank God back in the day, you know, people like Jim, and I give him all the praise that he said my name to people. He would tell people, yeah, you should hire Dove. Or if they were doing interviews with people, any of my clients, they would shout me out. You know, do you have any last words? Yeah, I want to shout out my publicist, Dove. I feel like that's a lost practice with a lot of artists.
Yeah, shouting out anybody on your team is like a lot of practice.
Yeah, so I know I'm talking forever and ever and ever, but the moral of that for me and the way that I got into this business was I didn't have a structured plan. I didn't have the education. You know, people will say, oh, you know, you have white privilege. You're white. Everybody, do you know how many people told me I don't hire white people? But I like you. I would like for you to teach my Black staff how to do what you do. A lot of people have said that to me, actually. And I respect it. And I'm like, you know what? Yeah, I would love that. I would love to teach more young people how to do these jobs so that they can be functional for themselves. And especially when they're independent.
Right.
But even within a major label structure, it helps your major label if you're doing good business on your own team, right? So yeah, so that was the evolution of how I got to be in the business.
So basically what I take from that, and you know, a lot of people we've had on the show there's certain qualities that stand out that I think, you know, play a part in being successful in this industry. Number one, it sounds like you were able to build some crazy relationships, healthy, long-lasting relationships. That sounds like that was, you know, crucial in your success in this industry. Being proactive. I mean, I know our audience is going to get tired of me saying that, but like, you know, you don't just, this is not an industry where you can just kind of sit back and chill. And it's like, no, you have to be active. You have to be out there. You have to be willing you know, to put yourself out there. And, you know, feel free if that's not something that you feel is, you know, a requirement, you know, in the formula for success in this, because your path wasn't structured. My path wasn't structured. You just have to be open to opportunities and then create opportunities at times. And you're just a go-getter. Like that's the energy that you need to be successful in this industry.
Yeah. And I think, you know, sadly, I'm not a person that uses my femininity as an excuse or anything, but it is true that when you are, as my friend B Mim said to me once, that I have the ambition of a man. And which I think is hilarious because some of the hardest workers I know are women. Right. But we get this stigma, like if we're too assertive or we're too pushy, I hate that word too. It's not that. It's that because our voices a lot of the time are not heard in a room, like we can say an idea and then a man says the same idea and it's heard and respected. Where ours was maybe overlooked or, hey, well, let's table that. But then a man says the same thing. And this is something that I'm sure a lot of your women, you know, who watch this show would say this crosses every type of industry. This is not exclusive to entertainment. So again, we can't make excuses by saying, well, I'm a girl and I get treated bad, so I got to fight harder. Nah, if you're a hustler, you're a hustler. If you're a worker, you're a worker. If I can run circles around you, I'm older than most people that are going to be watching this, but I can still run circles around a lot of y'all, not because I'm better, but because I have the ethic of that built in me. You know what I mean? There are people out here so much smarter than me, better educated, who have better jobs than me, but a lot of them don't necessarily have the longevity that I've been able to have just because of the fact that their work ethic is different, or perhaps they didn't value the relationships. When they hit peaks in their career, they got rid of a lot of relationships. But like they say, who you see going up, you got to see when you're coming down, right? Right. So, yeah. I mean,
my experience, I love working with women in this industry. I find that the communication is better. The professionalism, the more and obviously you can't blanket an entire group of people and everybody doesn't fall into this bucket. But percentage wise, the women have been much easier to work with than the men. So actually on this last project, the engineer is a woman. We have two out of the 6 artists on the project are women. My friend that's doing the documentary is a woman. I just think that it makes my life easier. You know, at least that's been my experience thus far, working with women. So yeah, hire more women and, you know, your projects will probably go smoother and better. But how do you feel like the role of a publicist, because everybody's role evolves over the years, right? Like management today is different than management, you know, 15, 10, 20 years ago. How has your role as a publicist evolved over the past 10, 15 years?
Okay, well, good. That's a good question. I don't even call myself a publicist anymore. I actually slapped everybody who calls me that because, like, you know, not really, but, you know, I am now what I would call more of a project manager, brand strategist, brand specialist. You know, I've been working with DJ Paul from 3-6 Mafia for 8 years. He kind of vacillates. He'll call me his PR sometimes, and sometimes he calls me his label manager. You know, depending on what's needed, that's the role that I fit. So while, yes, I still do media relations, I don't do it like I used to at all. Like, I've really stepped away from the front line, everyday, hard pitching kind of thing to where now I'm doing more brand development and helping these artists from the ground up to do their YouTube SEO and to make sure they understand how all their DSPs work and to make sure they're asking their distribution companies the right questions and to make sure they have the right distribution for what they want to do. Because each distribution company has different facets. And it's not to say that some are bad or some are good, but they don't all do the same things. And if you have just, like, for instance, if you want a sync licensing and you don't have a sync licensing company, there are distribution companies out here who have that. You know, if you want label services, then why would you use a do-it-yourself distribution? You need to be out looking for one of these distro companies that has label services that will also activate for you on the level you're on. Right. Because again, they're not a lot of people say, oh, well, my label doesn't do anything for me. My distro doesn't do anything for me. Well, what have you done for them? Do you have numbers? Do you have fans? Are you putting butts in seats? Are you selling merch? Because if you're not, it's like, why are they're just supposed to believe in you because your music is good. It's like, that's just not ever how it's worked. It's like, you can have a manager who believes in that. You can have a publicist even who believes in that. You can have your family and friends and your fans who believe in that. But labels now, especially distribution companies and even media, are beholden to numbers, right? What annoys me, though, is that too many industry people rely on numbers instead of factoring in talent, work ethic, ambition, those things that make a great, project work. Also, they kind of leave out the it factor sometimes. Right. Because somebody has a fan base does not mean they're a star. They might be to this specific fan base in a niche, but I've met people. I worked for The Baby 2016, 2017. He's always been a star from day one. What it took, and he had good music from day one. Did the music speak for itself? It took him time, repetition, concerted effort, a great team who believed in him, belief in himself. Even when things got down and when pieces of his life weren't going right, he got up every day and said, this is me. This is all I want to do, and I'm going to do it. And he made it work. And now the world gets to see a star. Right. But that started at the core. It didn't start from numbers. Right.
When you see that it factor, can you like give an example of what make you feel like, yeah, that artist has it? Maybe like an example of, a specific time he did something you saw, or it's just in his personality or the talent. Like, what is that for you when you see it?
For me, it's an intangible thing. It's like when I first met B.O.B., I was his very first publicist. But that was almost 3 years in the making, because I met him when he was like 16 years old through TJ Chapman. And it's like, I would run back to the guys at All Hip Hop, like, wait till you hear this guy B.O.B. He's going to be the next Andre 3000. This kid is crazy. He can produce, he raps, he sings, he does everything. And they go, yeah, Dove, you like everybody. Yeah. No, I don't like everybody, actually. But I'm a friendly person. But when it comes to what I love, I'm very, very adamant, right? So to be able to win the Grammy, and you can ask Chuck and Greg at All Hip Hop this, and I love this little story, is that the day that he got nominated for a Grammy, I called Greg specifically and said, tell me I was right. He's like, you know what, you're right. And then I called Chuck, tell me I was right. Okay, you were right. That's all I want to know. I was right. When I first started working with Jim, he was going through the transition of being the guy, in Dipset to being his own star. The it factor is him. First of all, it's a spark. It's like an intangible spark that you just see in a person, right? Every person with the it factor is not a celebrity. You can meet people that work at Walmart that have the it factor. We see these influencers. Some of them have the it factor. They're not necessarily famous, but they influence because they're special, right? So it's just looking this man in his eye and understanding his vision and believing it. That's what I look at. When I met Yo Gotti, he was 10 years in. 5-Star Chick had just dropped. It was a hit. He had the remix coming with Nicki Minaj when she was first starting out. He was, Gotti was ahead of his peers in so many ways in the street end of things. He just didn't really have the online part. And I was blessed to be brought in to work with him. I worked with him initially through the label, but then he hired me. I was with him for almost 3 years. And in that 3 years, we got to teach him how to use social media, teach his team how to use social media and how to have the website working for you in a way that works, and how to, the thing about Gotti is that he's such an exceptional businessman. He really is. Like, he's the type of CEO that's going to ask everybody on the team everyone he trusts, their opinions, but he takes that all and he puts it into a way that works for him. And then whatever he says, that's what we're doing. And you know it's going to work because he's sure-footed about it. And this is why men like him land on top. The baby, you know, like I said, he stuck to it. When the whole, you know, people weren't really paying him attention, when he really wasn't getting looks, you know, Arnold Taylor, his manager, you know, who founded SCMG and, you know, along with Carter, like these guys freaking believed in it. And they kept working even when times were hard, and they didn't complain. They just kept going. And look at them now. SCMG is literally one of the top independent labels in the country, out of North Carolina. Like, that's one of my favorite success stories, and I'm so proud of them. You know, Know the Product. Here's another person. She was signed. She was a star. She's always a star. But she was signed to a major label for many years. She didn't really flourish on that label the way she wanted to. She's independent now. She's flourishing more than she ever has in her life because her freedom, right? And to see the moves that she's made in her career, she's a boss. She knows what she wants, the way she wants it. She goes and gets it. It's like, these are people who I respect their work ethic, but the it factor is a magical thing. You know what I mean? So
have you ever considered, it seems like obviously your role now has gone beyond, you know, just publicity, as you just talked about it. Have you ever thought about stepping more into like a management role or label role? Like, what have been your thoughts around that?
An actual major label has never given me a shot to have a job, and I'm okay with that too. You know, I didn't come up in the label system. I'm not in the club, so to speak, and it's okay. I have a lot of friends within the label system who are amazing people and do amazing jobs. I've always been kind of a lone wolf. As far as artist management, I actually did try that for a couple years. I did a good job. I'm proud of the work I did. It just didn't work out. You know, it's like you have to be on the same page with the artist you manage. At the end of the day, I've learned so much through those experiences and through being able to watch how my idols in this business work, how they sustain, how they build relationships, and using my own experiences as well. Because again, I was in the clubs from age 15 years old. So you learn a certain kind of code in dealing with people and working with people, because you don't want to run into the wrong situations at the wrong time, right?
Right.
And it's no different in this business. It's like, if you burn bridges and you have to come back, you'd be surprised how much it can cost you in your career, right? So we want to maintain, it's not about kissing people's ass. I hate when people say that. Oh, I don't want to kiss ass. It's not about that. It's about, how about you just be a decent person and treat people with respect. And when people aren't maybe as big as you would like for your own clout, that you still treat them with respect, because you never know where they'll land, right? Right now, my favorite artist, and I'm going to say this, my favorite artist right now is Rumor, RMR. If you do not know who Rumor is, you go look him up. And everyone says, why is he your favorite artist? He doesn't have a lot of music out. He's got it, number one. He's got it. Number two, he's a genius. He's a musical genius. This guy's songwriting ability is crazy. And anyone so far I've seen who's a fan of Rumor gets it, and they're on. They're on board 100%. So all I know is once his album comes out, he's at it.
He wears the mask, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. I love him.
Right.
I love him. Like, I think the last artist I loved this much, like ever, was probably Trick Daddy. When Trick Daddy first came, you can tell me anything bad about Trick Daddy. Still to this day, I love him. But, and Know the Product, definitely when I met her, B.O.B., T-Pain, you know, who I met before he got famous. I always really believed in his talent. But I will say that when he first came out, I was really surprised at his work ethic. Like, I had no idea when I first met him that all the words that came out of his mouth, he literally manifested from the ground up. Because you know how people talk that trash. Well, I'm going to be big. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do that. And he literally did all of it. And look at him, like he's like one of the best hook writers, songwriters, like visionaries when it comes to what is going to be the next thing that I've ever met. Like, he's incredible.
Yeah. Tell me if you agree with this, because I feel strongly that most of the innovation in the music industry starts at an independent label. So the fact that more people like you aren't offered jobs at major labels is crazy to me, because it seems like all the creative, innovative ideas start at the independent level, and eventually the major labels adopt them and people think it's the greatest thing ever. So why not take more people from the independent community? Or like, and if, do you agree with that? Is that kind of what you see, or do you see something different?
It's funny because when you look at people like a Coach K or TJ Chapman or any of these guys who on certain levels, of course, they're parts of the industry, they have relationships within the industry, they may have even had industry jobs at some point, but their levels of independent thought are so great that I go, well, how would they even fit into a major label system? Because they think outside the box. Like, the way that they see things is so different. And I think this is part of why, you know, as much as I don't know all the inner trappings with Jay-Z, I feel like his creativity level and his ability to not only think out of the box, but also work with other people who think outside the box. When you have a person like Lenny S on your team, who's freaking genius, creative visionary, just an amazing human, it's like you surround yourself with this element of, I don't know, I guess vision, right? How do you box that into a system?
Right.
And so that might be why it doesn't work. It's not, you know, again, I have so many great friends within the major label systems, and, you know, I understand that some of them are extremely creative, amazing people, but they're also kind of confined at times by their budgets, by, you know, what's next based on decisions made by other people. Where when you're independent, if this is your stuff, you can literally just tap and say, I want to do this, I want to do that, and make it work, right?
Right.
So, you know, I don't know that some of us out here could survive the major label system. There's a discipline to it. And I think those people who have survived that major label system and become executives are tougher than nails. You know, they know everything top to bottom. So when do you want to have a lone wolf come into your well-organized pack? I don't know if that makes sense. So I'm thinking that might be why, you know?
Yeah. So Clubhouse, I know that Clubhouse had a really hot streak for a minute where there were like tons of artists having conversations 24/7. You were a big part of facilitating that. I'm sure you met a ton of great people through that process. And I know you were in a lot of rooms. I think it's slowed down the past few months or just this year. I haven't been in a room in a long time, and I know that there's other social audio-based apps that are popping up. Spotify just, you know, I think released theirs recently.
I just joined Green Room.
Yeah, so the Green Room. Through all of your conversations with artists on Clubhouse, what were some of the like constant frustrations that artists talked about? What were some of the most common questions that you fielded in Clubhouse?
That's a good question. I think that it's not so far removed from the same kind of questions I hear at conferences, like when I'm at A3C or, you know, at some of the smaller conferences where they have panels, you know, and you have this panel of specialists, and then you have artists in the audience asking honest questions because they just don't know. I think the difference with Clubhouse is that you had people who are willing to give real do-it-yourself advice. I think that barrier of us not having to be face-to-face, and also the pandemic that made a lot more people a little more open, right? It lended to more advice that was given to those questions. So some of the questions I hear would be like, how do I find a manager? how do I know what to ask my distribution company? They don't do anything for me. I need to know. I need to find a better situation. How do I get publishing? Or, you know, how do I find a good publishing company or a syncing company? A lot of the rooms on Clubhouse will be dedicated to listening to music. And I would go into those music rooms and rather, you know, yeah, I can give my opinion here or there, but I don't claim to be an A&R, although I do have good ear. You know, that's not what I do. What I can do, though, is I go to the artist's Instagram, go to their YouTube page, and just give them some viable tips. Here are some things you could do right now that would increase this visibility. You feel like your music's not being heard. You feel like you're not finding a manager or the right distribution. But a lot of the challenge you're having is with your own presentation. Your music could be good as hell, but why would I click it if the presentation's not there, right?
Right.
So I talked to them a lot about imaging, about getting, you know, that YouTube set up the right way. And about creating content too. A lot of people have done this thing in the last year where they archive all their old photos because they want to start fresh, but then they don't post anything. It's like, what is that about? I don't know.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think artists, especially rappers, you know, I know a lot of artists that rap really well, but that's it. Like they're good rappers. There's not a compelling story. The presentation is not appealing. All the stuff that you're talking about that surrounds the music that would actually get people to click the link or to give the music a chance is missing.
Yeah,
and that's probably the thing that I say the most to artists. It's typically that. Because I hate doing music reviews because, to be honest with you, I just don't like that much music. So I'm honest, so I can only say that a few different ways. So yeah, I'm definitely not the person for music reviews. I know that TJ does his music, well, he used to do his music review. I know a few other cats that do music reviews, and I definitely push them in that direction because I'm not the music review guy at all. Are you still in Clubhouse? Like, does Clubhouse?
Yeah. I unfortunately, in December, my dog passed away, and anyone who has followed me on socials or whatever knows my dog was like my child. So really hard for me. Yeah, it was hard. And I through the holidays, it got me through. Clubhouse, I was on there probably 18 hours a day because I just did not want to be alone. And when I tell you, thank God for the whole Clubhouse community for making me laugh and listening to me cry. And, you know, it's like a lot of vulnerability on there, especially at the holidays, because so many people were sad and depressed. They couldn't be with their families, and it was just a lot. So, you know, that was a great thing. But when January came, I took off and went to LA, Detroit, and just, you know, hey, I'm gonna bury my feelings and just go be away from everything, cut off everything for a while. I came back home. I still didn't want to be on Clubhouse. I was just like, I just can't. It was too much sharing for me. So then I went away again. I went to Vegas. I did meet some people from Clubhouse, though, in Vegas and in LA, which was amazing.
Nice.
It's so funny to say I met on Clubhouse, right? And then I did go into a couple rooms here and there, but it definitely wasn't the same. It's like the hallways kind of split up. So you don't see the same people anymore. And like, even when I started a room, I wasn't seeing all the familiar faces. It was like some new people and some old people, but it just was different, right? Then I went to Atlanta last week, and I had 3 people walk up and say, "Aren't you Dove? I know you from Clubhouse." And I'm like, oh my God, the world is changing. That's crazy. But, you know, of course they hear my voice first and they go, "Oh my God, you're Dove." And I'm like, isn't that weird though, how, yeah, I might have had my picture in there a few times, but sometimes I have like Elon Musk and my Dogecoin memes, you know, like, that's just what I do. So it was really funny to feel the kind of the impression that Clubhouse has made on us.
Yeah, I think that I think it was a special moment where artists could really have access to people that have been in the game for decades. I mean, don't get me wrong. There were a lot of people that were talking and didn't know what they were talking about. So you needed to weave through a few folks and jump to room, but there were some heavy hitters on that app for some time, you know, in the rooms that I would pop into.
Yep.
And, you know, typically you just don't get access to people like that early in your career. So I hope that as many artists as possible took advantage of that time. And if it's still happening, you know, because I definitely got to meet a lot of new people, you know, and expanded my network a ton, you know, through Clubhouse. So that was awesome. So we'll wrap it up. I do have one more question for artists that are looking to get a publicist. That's still something that, you know, artists think is the last, you know, key to their success.
Right. They get told that a lot, actually. People say, you want to win, just get a publicist, which
yeah. At what point, so now that we know a publicist can and probably should wear more hats than just the traditional, you know, publicist, at what point in their career should you invest in that person, or should be looking for that person?
That's a good question. And I don't want to leave here really quick without letting you know these boxes. I'm not
I forgot.
Yeah, I wanted to bring that up. I collect Funko Pops, y'all. And this is what I'm going to show you. I collect Funko Pops, lots of them. So this little stack on this side over here is the ones I'm selling right now. And then this little stack over here is my shipping materials. And then that up there on that shelf is actually some of my more valuable pieces. You see my Hustle and Flow poster. I actually got that before I met DJ Paul. And funny, I started working with him. But yeah. So, okay. So here's the deal. There are particularly young publicists out here who are killing the game. If you look at someone like Chanel, who works with Jim Jones and Cam and God, all the people. She used to work with Chinks, rest in peace. Like, Chanel is freaking amazing, and one of, you know, the people that I really admire in this business. And her team, they do traditional PR, but then they also add other elements to it. Like, she produces events and all kinds of other things. There is a network of Marie Driven, you know, another person that does really, really good job out here, gets her artists seen, connects them the right way. God, there's so many. I don't want to get into naming names, and people are like, you forgot to name me, but you know who you are. At the end of the day, I think there's a value when you have a song that's buzzy. So let's just do it from a local perspective, right? So if you're in the tri-state area, New York, New Jersey, Connecticut, or if you're in LA, or if you're in Atlanta, which are considered, you know, more major markets, right? Or even in Dallas, you know, in Texas, Houston, because there's a big music community. There are great publicists in those areas that can help you as you're wanting to go on DJ runs, you know, hitting the local stations, hitting the local press. Everybody thinks, and this is, I'm going to say every artist will get in and say, well, I'm going to hire a publicist. And I go, okay, well, what are your goals? I want to be on Complex. I want to be on Double XL. I want to be on Hip Hop DX. I want to be da-da-da. And it's like, with what? With what? Like, I'm not being mean. You could be the dopest person, the dopest artist, the cutest face. You could be making cool content. You could have some numbers, but at the end of the day, they don't know you. And it takes time to build relationships. So what these publicists do out here is they're helping you create visibility and relationships. It's kind of like, I have a Bandwagon Starter in my bio on a couple of places of my socials. People always laugh, like, what does that mean? It means everybody wants to jump on the bandwagon when it's moving, but who starts it? Who's the person that's there helping you put the wheels on it and making sure it's oiled and that the nuts and bolts are tight and that, you know, you got the right things in the wagon to get people to want to jump in it? That's me. That's what I do. Right. So these publicists out here are part of that bandwagon start. They are part of what helps get your bandwagon look appealing enough that people want to jump on it and in it and be around you. And the fact is, when you get out here and do the work and support who supports you, if the little, I hate the word little, but that's what they say, the little blogs, you know, they're not little blogs. They have SEO, search engine optimization. Some of those smaller brands that you may not have heard of actually have better SEO on Google than some of the bigger brands who never knew how to optimize their websites.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so you can go in and get an interview with a brand that then puts you on their website and maybe on their YouTube channel. And now your name, when I type in your name, it shows up because you did that interview. You should do every interview that comes your way, even if it's a little cousin and they want to do an IG interview, do it. Because those things pick up. Those things, you never know what someone might see or who might see it that might say, this is amazing. And who am I to talk? Because it took Dane forever to even get me to do this interview because I hate doing interviews. But let me do this. But that said, when the media wants you, they will come to you. Remember the old saying from that movie, build it and they will come?
Mm-hmm.
Build it and they will come. But you have to build it first. So media, and this goes for all the big dogs. If you ask any journalist worth their weight right now, how can I get in touch with you? How can I show you? I mean, they might give you an email address and have you send it, but justifiably, they cannot feature you if you don't fit the format, if you don't fit the demographic of what they have, if they have a certain, like if all they do is talk to A-list celebrities and you're just starting out, it's not rude to say, hey, I want to share my music, but it is rude if you call them all kinds of names because they don't recognize your talent. That's stupid. And there we go, burning bridges, because I've seen some horrible emails that journalists, bloggers, radio hosts have gotten from artists or even from their managers that are so disrespectful. And guess what? We all talk about it behind your back. We all do. We spread the word.
The industry is small.
Yes.
Sure.
Yes. So your reputation is key. Keep that golden. That is literally the one thing that's going to carry you through every phase of your career and every phase of your life is your reputation and your name. That's all you have. So keep it good, keep it straight. When you work with a publicist, understand that even if they said, I guarantee that I'm going to do X, Y, Z for you, they may have the best relationship in the world at a certain magazine. But guess what? That magazine could turn around and say, well, we're not really ready for that yet.
Right.
Or the person that they had over there could leave, and then they don't really have that same connect. A good publicist is going to tell you there's no guarantees. There's no guarantees other than I'm going to put you in front of the right people, and I'm going to pitch you, and we're going to do the best we can do to get you these interviews. If you start thinking that you're too lit to do certain segments or certain interviews, you've already lost.
Right.
I had, when I first started my website, okay, I started after I left All Hip Hop in 2008. By 2010, I started my own website. I had no views, nothing. But because of my relationships, people like Akon, T.I., Fat Joe, Corrupt, I could go on, gave me interviews. Because guess what? When they were on the come up, I interviewed them. Right. When nobody really was, talking to them. And so they remember these things. Like, you know what? Yeah, whenever you want that, I'll do that. So relationships are everything, people. Treat your publicists kindly. Hire them when you have something to share. That means some music videos. That means music lined up, not just one single from 2 months ago that you think they should get you press on. That's not how it works. I'm a journalist. I don't want your song from 2 months ago. I want to know what's next.
Right.
And what's next should literally be firing out. If you're independent, man, please stop sitting on songs for 6 months thinking that's the move. That is not the move.
Yeah. No, you should. I talk about this with artists all the time too. Not only should you have a plan to roll out your music or your album or your next single, but you should have a good understanding long term how that album fits into an even longer strategy, because you have to be so much more present these days and you have to put out so much more content. A lot of artists put out an album, they have certain expectations when it drops. Sometimes those expectations aren't met. And then they're like, oh shit, what do I do now? Now I'm going back to the drawing board, as opposed to like having a good understanding of, okay, once I put out this album, that fits into my strategy like this, because after the album comes out, I'm doing X, Y, and Z to continue to tell my story and to build my base. So yeah, it seems like we have a lot of the same conversations. I talk to a lot of artists. You talk to a lot of artists, and I appreciate you sharing your experience on the MEC. A lot of gems were dropped. Is there any last words, or you just want to let people know where or if they can find you on social media?
Yeah, I will say, you know, most of my socials are Fly Like Dove. On Clubhouse and on Green Room now, I'm just at Dove. Thank you. Got it before the soap did. And you know, just know that you cannot pick my brain. No, you cannot get phone calls with me to discuss your hopes and dreams, because I have too much work. I literally have too much work right now. And I charge a fee to consult, to give you real advice. So if you said, hey, I want to learn how to put my YouTube channel together, yes, I'm going to charge you a fee, or you can pay me to do it, you know. But if you want a real tutorial, yeah, I charge a fee for that, and I'm going to teach you how to really change the game. But even that, I'm very sparing with it, because I have clients that need my time and my energy. You know what I mean? So yeah.
Right. Yeah, no, I mean the people that are solid and know a lot of stuff in this industry, they're not waiting around waiting for anybody to to put them to work. They are super busy, so just be mindful of that, you know, as you're reaching out to people. Well, Dove, thank you very much. I appreciate it. You're not based in LA, because you said you visited LA. Are you still in New York? You're in New York?
I'm based in New York. Yep.
Okay. Well, hopefully one day, the next time you're out in LA, I could treat you to lunch. Please
Well,
let
I'll be
me know.
there next week, actually. I'm
Next
going
week?
out, yeah, I'm going out for Brooklyn Queens Sweet 16 party.
Until when? Like, when's the last day you'll be here?
That is a question mark. I didn't buy a ticket home yet. So typically as of now, the 28th, but I think I might extend for a couple of days. So yeah.
If you extend, because I'll be gone until the 28th. If you do extend, I'm gonna put a reminder in my calendar just to touch base and see if you did extend your I don't know if it's a vacation or just a work.
No, it's work. It's BET weekend, actually.
Oh, nice.
I have some photo shoots and meetings and things like that. So yeah.
Awesome. Well, if we can make it happen, great. If not, you know, next time. But again, thank you very much. I appreciate it. Yeah, and I'll be in touch.
Okay, well, I appreciate you. Thank you so much for the opportunity.
Oh, always welcome back. I'll speak to you soon.
Okay, thank you. Bye.